The bank that duped its customers. Wells Fargo's scandal. In the vast annals of banking infamy, few tales are quite as audacious as the one about a bank that opened over 2 million fake accounts. No, this isn't the beginning of a bad banking joke or a screenplay for a heist movie, but the bleak reality of Wells Fargo's epic fall from grace. Let's roll back the clock, shall we? Founded in 1852, during the gold rush days, Wells Fargo was more than just a bank. It was the embodiment of the American dream. This bank wasn't born in the gleaming corridors of Wall Street, but in the dusty trails of frontier towns, amidst the clang of pickaxes and dreams of gold. A beacon in the financial wilderness, carrying with it tales of pioneers, wagons, and of course, trustworthy banking. Imagine a bank that was actually trusted. A quaint notion for sure, given what we now know. Fast forward to the turn of the century and beyond. Wells Fargo wasn't just surviving, they were thriving. They had pioneered innovative banking solutions, effectively setting the tone for the modern banking industry. Remember the early ATMs, or the round-the-clock telephone banking services? Well, hats off to Wells Fargo for those. By 2010, they had the bragging rights as the world's second-largest bank by market capitalization. But here's the catch. The bank's most significant competitive edge wasn't just its expansive branch network or its history. It was its strategy. Mergers, acquisitions, and a fanatical emphasis on cross-selling services to existing customers. 8 is great, they cheered, referencing their goal to sell each customer at least 8 financial products. Such ambition, or should we say audacity. While competitors like Bank of America faced public relations nightmares and JP Morgan Chase had its share of challenges, Wells Fargo seemed, for a long while, to be sailing on calm waters. They were the financial world's darling, often heralded as the golden child, amidst the often murky world of big banks. The problem, it seems, was nestled quietly in the heart of an institution considered the epitome of integrity. By the early 2010s, the world was on its shaky feet after the great financial catastrophe of 2008. Banks, for the most part, were viewed with a wary eye. Wells Fargo, however, seemed to be the exception. While many financial behemoths were cautiously rebuilding their tarnished reputations, Wells Fargo was riding high, basking in its glowing reviews. They were the exception, the good guys in a world where good and banking seldom went hand in hand. The trouble beneath this shimmering surface began with a seemingly benign strategy: cross-selling. On paper, it seemed innocent enough. Offer the customers you already have more of the services they need. But in practice, well, if you've ever tried to juggle flaming torches while riding a unicycle, you'd come close to understanding Wells Fargo's approach. This wouldn't have been such an issue if not for their gargantuan ambition. Employees were under monstrous pressure to meet sales targets. And when they couldn't, fiction became fact, and voila, fake accounts materialized, like rabbits from a magician's hat. Yet, for a long time, the scheme went unnoticed. After all, who would suspect such duplicity from a revered institution? It's almost laughable, really. Picture Alice, a single mother working tirelessly to provide for her family, suddenly finding her credit score in tatters due to a credit card she never even knew existed. Or Mike, a septuagenarian who had trusted the bank for decades, suddenly waking up to discover not one, not two, but several savings accounts opened in his name. The shock, the betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all. By 2013, whispers began to surface. Stories of unauthorized accounts of money moved without permission. The kind of stories that are easy to dismiss as baseless rumors, especially when they concern a banking giant that's been around since before the light bulb was invented. The initial tip-offs came via the Los Angeles Times. An investigative piece unveiled that Wells Fargo employees were engaging in questionable practices. We're talking about the creation of unauthorized accounts, credit cards opened without customer consent, and funds transferred between these accounts without permission. As the investigation into the bank's practices ramped up, the legal consequences started pouring in. In September 2016, Wells Fargo was slapped with a $185 million fine by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or OCC, and the City and County of Los Angeles. Now, $185 million might sound like pocket change for a bank of Wells Fargo's stature. But it wasn't just about the money, it was about the message it sent. The golden child of banking had been publicly and officially rebuked. The fallout was swift. The CEO, John G. Stumpf, who had once overseen this empire's meteoric rise, was summoned before Congress. A suited-up executive, once the captain of his ship, now navigating a sea of critical senators, media glare, and disappointed onlookers. And while Stumpf put on a brave face, defending and, at times, deflecting, the cracks in the fortress were evident. By October of the same year, Stumpf, probably weary from all the firefighting, announced his retirement. The internal dynamics of the bank underwent a seismic shift. Former employees spoke out, not just about the sales targets, but about the toxic environment that they claimed led to such behaviors. There were tales of anxiety, fear, and a dogged pursuit of numbers at the cost of ethics. It was a sad fall from grace for a bank that once symbolized the American dream. Now, if we were to evaluate the damage purely in financial terms, it was pretty staggering. Aside from the previously mentioned $185 million slap on the wrist, there were other fines and penalties that quickly piled up. In 2018, Wells Fargo was again fined $1 billion by the CFPB and OCC for issues related to its mortgage and auto lending practices. As if the fraudulent account scandal wasn't enough, here was another blow, making one wonder, was this the modus operandi at the bank? But money, as most grown-ups will begrudgingly admit, isn't everything. The real stinger was the Federal Reserve's unprecedented move in 2018 to cap the bank's growth, forbidding Wells Fargo from growing any larger than its total assets at the end of 2017 until it had proven it had cleaned up its act. Imagine telling one of the biggest banks in America, "Sorry, you're grounded." Now, as for criminal charges, no top executives saw the inside of a jail cell, though several were fined and banned from ever working in banking again. But while the big fish may have swum away, the bank's lower-level employees bore the brunt. Thousands lost their jobs in the aftermath, many of whom had merely been following orders or trying to meet the bank's oppressive sales quotas. Post-scandal, the bank, realizing it needed more than a band-aid solution, went into overdrive. The board decided on a leadership overhaul, with Tim Sloan taking the reins after John Stumpf's exit. New faces, new strategies, and a promise of a brighter tomorrow. They introduced a slew of reforms, including eliminating sales targets in retail banking, as if someone finally realized that pushing employees to the brink might, just might, lead to unethical behavior. If there's one thing we've learned from this epic saga, it's that trust, once shattered, takes a heck of a lot of time to rebuild, especially when you've got the weight of a history dating back to the gold rush days. Wells Fargo's journey post-scandal has been rocky, to say the least. Their journey of redemption is still very much in progress, with the bank continuing its attempts to rebuild its reputation and regain public trust. And while its future as a leading financial institution remains uncertain, the Wells Fargo scandal serves as a critical case study, a cautionary tale for corporations everywhere on the real cost of ethical transgressions. Whether Wells Fargo's Phoenix Act is successful remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure, in the annals of banking history, its tale serves as a stark reminder that growth at any cost can come at a very, very high price.